and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and as always, we are joined by the lovely Kerry Greenaway. Hello, Kerry.
Hello.
And at this point, I should also point out that we're exclusive to the PA UK radio network.
We most certainly are one of the largest UK radio paranormal radio stations in the UK. I totally got that muddled up, didn't I?
Yeah, well, don't worry about it. It's also the largest paranormal podcast radio station in my living room.
And mine.
Exactly. So there you go.
I did.
And everyone's listening.
Yeah, sorry, just want to point out, there are loads and loads of shows on the Paranormal UK radio network covering all range of different topics to suit all tastes. So a dog scratching in the background there. So go check out some of the other shows because they're amazing.
Obviously not as amazing as this one, but they're okay, you know. Can't big them up too much.
Oh, yeah, it's a true story.
So how have you been this week anyway, Kerry?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing how we're going to get out of this lockdown. Although I did read an article today in the Times, upmarket reading, in the Times saying that non-essential retail, it might not be open until the end of April. And I'm like, that's another 2 months away.
Yeah,
but we shall see.
Exactly. They also think that, or they're anticipating that all over 40s are going to be done by the end of March.
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to be done by June.
Yeah, which would make sense to get that age range, because that age range is generally the ones that are on furlough at the moment. I mean, I know the youngers are as well, but there's a lot of us over 40s that work in retail. It would be nice going back, having at least had the first part of the vaccine.
Absolutely. I mean, it's nice to see now that there is actually an end coming. Mm. Whether it's the end that we're all going to want is a different story, because there still might be restrictions imposed for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But at least it'll be lightened up. I did read again something about they're thinking about relaxing the rule that we can't mix with other households. So I think they said like 2 others now.
Yeah.
They're contemplating whether or not that will come into force next week or the week after. I don't know, but that's something that they're mulling over.
We are just going to have to wait and see. Clearly, we're recording this before the announcement on Monday.
Yes.
Just suddenly thought about that because this goes out Tuesday. Yeah, I do think we have got light at the end of the tunnel. I just think it's been a mammoth effort from a lot of people in so many different fields pulling together to get this to work. And that goes down from the virologists to the people who make the vaccines to, all of those people have been working silently almost from the beginning to try and get a handle on this. Yeah, and then obviously we see like the frontline workers, don't we? We see the NHS and the community side of things coming into play. But what goes on that we don't get told, I think we need to acknowledge the expertise and the hours they've put in. Because I bet you any money like they're not sitting there just doing their normal 9 to 5. They've probably been ploughing many hours on this to try and get a handle on it.
You know yourself, I'm one of those people that are sitting around in the background, and you know how much work I put in. And that's just to get the vaccinators out vaccinating.
Yeah.
But they've all got to go through the interview process. They've all got to be DBS checked. And so there's lots of stuff, like admin-wise, that one person has to go through before they can actually vaccinate.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so much talk, and I want to touch on this briefly. There's so much talk out there. You've got anti-vaxxers, you've had conspiracy theorists from the beginning on this one. But I honestly think that people are jumping to mass conclusions on a lot of things. I can understand people's fears.
Yeah.
I can understand how worrying it might be. I can also understand why figures don't always seem to add up. I think you have to look at the broad spectrum of things and see it as everybody has worked incredibly hard under incredibly challenging
I think
circumstances.
The thing with figures is that no matter what you can do all sorts of stuff to those figures, but you can always get them to say what you want them to say.
True. True.
You know, you can play about with figures as much as you like, and each time you'll come out with a different answer.
Mm.
But it depends on how you manipulate those numbers.
Mm.
And I think a lot of anti-vaxxers, okay, they do say that, you know, the figures don't always add up, but what are they doing to those figures?
Yeah, and I think you do have to look at the parameters, and we talked about statistics before now. Only statistics are only good for the range that they've looked at. You know, we looked at that in previous show before now when we looked at Friday the 13th, and also when we looked at some of, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know we talked about it in a show recently. Full moon having an effect, werewolves.
Mm.
You know, but you have to
Yeah,
look at the range that they're looking at, and we haven't. They can only, if they gave us every single piece of information, a lot of it we wouldn't understand.
yeah,
A lot of it would be it would be information overload, and so they give us what we need and the reasoning behind it, just enough to make us understand it to the point of what we need to do. The
mm,
rest of that information, they're the ones who are dealing with it. And I, everybody is going to make mistakes under any circumstance. You know, nobody's perfect. Governments aren't perfect. Physicians aren't perfect. Medical people aren't perfect. No, we have the human factor of imperfection in
yeah,
this. And so I'm not saying mistakes haven't been made. They probably have. We know they have in certain areas. But you're looking at this globally, not
mm,
just as an individual country. And you have to look at so many different factors in regard to, well, so and so country did it and they're all right now, well, their demographic and their circumstances completely different from what we have in the UK or what they have in America or what they have in Spain or wherever. You know, you have to be very, very conscious of what you're comparing things to.
mm,
And, you know, I read a lot about conspiracy theories. I read a lot in regards to past conspiracy theories, even down to like, did we walk on the moon? You know, that old cookie. I have a feeling sooner or later it's going to be, did we actually land on Mars? You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's relevant at the moment, isn't it? You know, we've just put a pod thing on Mars. Um,
Well, I mean, there is a lot of photographs out there now that this is like the first picture of Mars,
mm,
and you can actually see ET on it, and
mm.
there's a McDonald's up in the background, and you
Even
know,
Joe Biden on his chair.
yeah, exactly. So there's proof life does exist on Mars already.
Yeah. I've seen there's some of the great memes that have come out, I have to say, on that
There
one.
was one.
But you just have to look at a whole range of data, not just one thing. And this is unfortunately where conspiracy theory comes from, is
Mm,
joining dots and sometimes coming up with 5 or 6 or even 25. You know what I mean? And it's not, everyone goes, oh, look at the facts, look at the facts. One thing I would like to address before we go further into this show is everyone's going, one of the big things is they're using aborted fetuses cells in the vaccine. If you research this, back in the 1960s, 1970s, they did do research on vaccinations with aborted fetal cells. However, they can reproduce those now. So they're not taking aborted fetuses and using those cells in modern day vaccines. They're using cells that have come from that research initially, but not doing it now. So although it is classed as that, it isn't that, if that makes sense. And that's where
mm,
research needs to be done. You need to know what you're talking about. Formaldehyde is another thing that's in vaccines. That is reproduced, but we actually do have that naturally in our bodies anyway. A lot of these
yeah,
substances we do actually have in our bodies. You know what I mean? Naturally produced by our body. Small, tiny, tiny quantities of this are being used and injected. But they're, because we produce them naturally, our bodies can deal with that, which is partly why they're used in vaccines. They wouldn't deliberately inject with something that they know would cause harm. I do not believe that. I do not
no,
believe that any governing body would deliberately want to do something to harm. We've had fantastic past vaccine results with things like measles, polio, eradicated in in the Western world pretty much now, right?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
because of vaccines. And you have to know the difference between a vaccination, which will give you the antibodies that will prevent you from getting the disease, and then a vaccine that is helping you to cope with the disease. There is a difference in that too. So although COVID isn't going anywhere, it's not going to go away, it's going to hopefully reduce the symptoms enough to make it more easier for our bodies to deal with once we get it, rather than not getting it. It's a bit like the flu in that respect. And every year the flu mutates, and every year they have to jiggle the vaccine a little bit. You know, that's why you have to have a different flu shot every single year, because it's a different strain. They're looking at things like that all the time. And this is where my faith in science and my faith in virologists and vaccine makers and all that come into play. Because if you've got to think, whatever job you're in, you are in it to do the best you can do, right?
Yep.
You're not in it for some conspiracy. They're not going to be able to do a global conspiracy of this scale that people are talking about. They can't even manage to get in a room and agree on Brexit. Look at how long that took to agree. Exactly. So you're telling me that there's a worldwide government conspiracy for control when they've pretty much got it already. You know, I just don't buy into it. And I find it very hard sometimes looking at my socials, and this is not just my Facebook, but Twitter and other, socials that are out there, when I see lots of varying opinions, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but be very discerning what you read, because you have confirmation bias, and that's a human trait as well that can lead you down that route of believing something because you believe it. So you'll look for facts that will back up your belief system. And we've talked about that in a few blogs recently that have gone up on the Paranormal Concept show. In regards to the paranormal, this is not actually anything to do with what we're talking about at the moment, but you have to be very aware of it. And this leads us into our topic of today's show. We're actually looking at divination, and this is where your confirmation bias for the answers you get through any form of divination can really play a part. So you do have to be careful of that. But anyway, let's get on to the lighter topic, because we've gone down quite a heavy avenue. But I think it's important to reiterate that those facets of human nature that we've all got, that we have to be aware of. And it's interesting. I find that side of it very interesting. And I do find it very interesting also when you look at things like divination. Working as a spiritual girl, I do look at these sort of things, because you do kind of wonder, are we just blowing air into the wind, as it were, making it up as we go along? Or is there something to it? What's your opinion on divination, Paul?
No, I do actually think that it is something, because it's really difficult to explain. I do think, we make our own luck in life. And when it comes to divination, if you're told something, you've got the possibility to try and make it happen. So if, say, for example, I don't know, you don't do the lottery, but then in the divination, because it's to tell the future, you're going to be in for a big win with the lottery. So you then start doing it. But if you wasn't told that information, you wouldn't have done it. So I think it's about making your own luck and changing. I mean, sometimes for the better. So yeah, I just think you make your own luck in life, and you've got to go for things, and I think that's what divination pushes people to do.
I can see the point. I do think sometimes, like, if you go back into like more olden times, they would make decisions on portents and omens and rudimentary divination kind of methods. I think there's a famous one, isn't there, of Elizabeth I wouldn't get coronated until she'd got the perfect day. So she would get John Dee to do divination to get the right date for her coronation. That kind of thing. She would rely quite heavily on that at times throughout her reign. And it worked quite nicely for her in that respect, didn't it? I mean, you could argue it wouldn't have mattered. She still would have had the reign she had as queen on what day she got coronated. But for her, that was very important to make sure she got the right date.
So isn't this why the Queen has two birthdays? Just in case the weather's bad on the first one or something?
We would all like that, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
I know quite a few people, actually, who have actually postponed They've gone to the Queen method. They've had their birthday in lockdown, so they've gone, right, we'll celebrate it properly. So
Yeah,
everybody this year, hopefully, is going to have two birthdays, a bit
I,
like
I think, but
Queenie.
I think by the time it comes round, I'm going to about three. I think,
Oh,
yeah, three in one.
why not?
Yeah, actually, I might just let it last 3 weeks instead.
A 3 week celebration.
Yeah, of my amazing birthday.
Why not? Gosh, because you're worth
Exactly.
it, right?
Exactly. That's what it's all about.
But I think this idea of, I don't know about you, I've always had a fascination of trying to see what the future might hold. You know, answering integral questions. You know, I don't know. I've always been drawn to that, or that need to know of what's coming, or what's the possibility of coming. Should I say that
Mhm.
more? You know, things like that. How does it work? Is there something more out there? And that's kind of been a driving quest for me. But then I think that's quite an integral paranormal thing. What, you know, those questions are kind of similar, aren't they? Why are we here? Do we control our own destiny? Do we go on after life? Is there life after life kind of thing? You know, that seeking of something more than just this physical existence. Um, because otherwise, I think, because we're conscious thinking, intelligent creatures, I think we do have that need to know. You know, we do
Yeah,
have
I
that.
think
Otherwise, what's the point?
it's not just a need to know. It's also we like to control and we like to feel in control, and I think that's part of it as well.
But aren't we asking something that's out of our control for answers in divination?
Yeah, but then again, if you know what the outcome's going to be because of the divination, you can control it.
True, but then I read tarot cards, and I've done various forms of divination in other ways. But when I've done tarot and I've asked a question about a certain circumstance, at the time it wasn't relevant. But when I look back at some of the things I've done and well, the answers that come out, it did happen. Not through anything I controlled, but it kind of reassured me at the time that that wasn't the situation. But then later it sort of transpired that actually that was the situation. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't think I made sense there.
No, I think I know where you're going. Yeah, no, I don't. I still think even if it's a subconscious effort, you're guiding yourself to that way.
But you can't control what other people do, and that's generally when you're divining. Um, a lot of people will go for, like, they'll come for a love reading. You know what I mean? They
Mm,
don't always get told the answers they want to hear in that reading, so they'll dismiss it. Ah, it's crap. But it will play out how it's been read, and that's not because they've pushed it that way. It's because it's just the other person. It's nothing to do with them. It's more to do with another person. So I don't know. I still find it incredibly interesting. I still use it as a tool. I do tarot readings for people, and so far it hasn't been wrong. So I don't know. You can argue many ways around this and look at it psychologically. You can say, you know, if you didn't know, if you didn't have a heads up, as it were, would you have acted differently? But I think it's a little bit too indefinite. You can't sit
mm.
there and go, so and so is going to do so and so to you. You can sort of, there's going to be deception, there's going to be stabbed in the back, blah, blah, blah. But you can't be as definite as, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
It,
I do get it
you are
absolutely.
looking through a
It,
veil.
it's just something. It's just something that I'm very sceptical over,
Mm,
and I don't completely buy into that whole concept.
mm. I think you have to be very careful what you interpret. I think when you do readings for yourself or for other people, or you go and have a reading, I think you have to be very, um, not dismissive and not cynical, but sort of
Mm,
just take it and forget it and then see how it plays
yeah,
out. You shouldn't make decisions on any form of divination. I know famous characters in history have done so, but I would never advise you don't go for a decision-making process. I would not make personally, if I'm doing a form of divination for myself, I wouldn't necessarily make a decision on what I've divined. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know for a fact I haven't. It's played out as the cards have said, but it needed to play out. Some situations need to
Yeah.
play out so you're ready. If I'd made the decision too soon, I wouldn't have learned lessons that I needed to learn through a situation, for example. I read, I'll give you an example. I don't feel like I'm explaining this right. I did a divination on a friend who I thought was being a bit shady, and there was nothing specific, but I just had that feeling that was going on. And I did a 3-card spread, and it came up with basically, you're going to get stabbed in the back, it's going to rock your foundations. It was all quite doomy and gloomy, and I was like, there's nothing tangible now to make me think that that's where this is going to go. So I dismissed it. I thought, oh, that's just an anomaly. Hoped for the best, shall we say. It played
Yeah.
out that that's exactly what happened. I was incredibly hurt through that situation because honesty, that's all it would have taken from that person, would have been a bit of honesty in that situation. But the person didn't. Ruined our friendship. We're not friends to this day because of that. But I could have made a decision back then when I knew that, when that came up in the cards. But it was
Yeah.
too soon to make that decision because the person wasn't doing anything specific that I could go. It just felt, there was just a feeling, if that makes sense. My intuition was sending me little signals about it. So I did a little reading and that's what came out. And that is exact. But it was about a year later that happened. It was a good while
But then isn't
later.
that sort of flagging some of the issues that you saw and told you something that you already knew?
Possibly. Possibly.
I
I
mean,
haven't got the
again,
answers, have I?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's all speculation, isn't it?
Mm,
And that's what the whole divination thing is, and that's why I have so much of an issue with it
mm,
because it is just guessing what could happen, and then some people make it happen,
mm,
and I just question everything, and that's it just raises for me it raises too many questions than answers,
mm. It is an
and that's
it is
it is an interesting subject. Don't get me wrong,
yeah.
but again, for me personally, it just raises too many questions, and I mean, yourself when we have like after show chats and things like that, I ask so many questions,
Yeah.
and
Which
in
is
the
a
end,
good
you're
thing
just
to do.
like, go and do it yourself. Go on.
Yeah, it is a good thing to do though. Question. You shouldn't I don't there's nothing wrong with questioning things. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's where you learn at the end of the day. That's where knowledge comes from if you question things. And don't take one person's answer for it. Ask the same question to several people who do that work in that field. And you
yeah,
might get a different explanation for the same thing, but one might make more sense. I mean, we did say to you, go try things yourself.
yeah,
Don't take my word for it. Sometimes with these spiritual practices, you need to try them yourself. And when we talked about this in regards to magic, people say, does it work? I believe it does. Yeah? I think you have to be very careful what you ask for when you're doing magic, but generally it might not be exactly how you asked for, but you will get what you asked for. So the
yeah.
old adage, be careful what you ask for, it might come true kind of scenario. And this is kind of the same. The problem with divination is you're trying to see beyond a realm. You're trying to see
Mm.
through through the mists, as it were. Do you know what I mean? And that can be very obscure. And sometimes they won't give you the answer because you're not supposed to know. Because you have to
Yeah.
go through that life lesson yourself.
So the weak point in the whole divination sequence, as it were, is the person doing the divination. Because isn't it down to their interpretation of what they see or what messages they get and how they interpret them?
But then, like we've just talked about in regard to conspiracy
Mm.
theory, you've got that human factor. It's not infallible. You are not infallible as a human. And
Mm.
we make so many mistakes as humans, it's untrue.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it is. It's the human factor. But we find this there's that philosophical argument, is if a human wasn't in the room, would paranormal activity even happen? If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Well, you go, yeah, but if no one's there to win, is it?
Yeah.
Do you know? You know, it's that kind of argument, isn't it? It's that philosophical argument. And because we haven't got scientific proof that we can see beyond, that there is even another veil, you know, that there is even another realm out there. They think there is. There's theories about it, but we don't know.
Yeah, but is it a realm or is it a dimension?
I kind of use the word interchangeably,
Okay.
personally. When I sort of talk realms, I talk it runs conjunction with our,
Mm.
you know, our physical being. But so many cultures look into this. And it goes back, divination this is, goes back a hell of a long way. I mean, you can go to pretty much any culture and find a form of divination, whether it be looking at the stars, you know, constellations, eclipses, comets, seasons, how they change, and the weather warnings that we now know. I mean, red sky at night, shepherd's delight, form of divining the weather, everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Looking at animal migration, tossing sticks, stones,
Runes.
runes. You know, those go back. You go back a long, long time.
Yeah.
African tribes used bones for divination, just chucking down some bones. I think there's a film. Oh gosh, it's got Alan Rickman in it.
Are you talking about Robin Hood?
Yes,
Oh,
Prince of
yeah, the
Thieves.
one that Brian Adams done the song for.
That's right, Prince of Thieves one.
Prince of Thieves, that's the one. Yeah,
Yep,
because
she
the
witch.
oracle that he went to through roans and blood and yeah,
Spat on it and God knows what else,
yeah,
and then read
disgusting.
what she could. Pretty disgusting. But people were doing that kind
Mm.
of divination way, way back.
Yeah,
You know, when you think about it,
yeah,
and all sorts of things, even down to how hens pecked at their grain to form messages. It's called
yeah.
electriomancy.
Isn't numerology a form of divination as well, but just with numbers?
Yeah,
Yeah.
seeing patterns in things to get a message is basically where we're going with this. You see a pattern in something. It does go nowadays. We use divination. We look at tarot cards. They have specific meanings, and you know you lay them out in a specific pattern. But we know the meanings of the cards. However, I'm going to argue that point later on in the show. But you know, you're seeing patterns in things to receive a message, and that's the basis of divination.
Okay, so is that the definition of divination?
In my opinion, that's what it would be.
Okay, because taking that maybe a step further and turning it into the modern world, all our technology is based on numbers and patterns.
Yeah.
So could you not argue then that your computer works on divination? Television signals, they work on divination because it's all zeros and ones, binary.
As coding.
Okay.
You are setting that pattern. That's we've made that pattern, so they're not. I would say something like maybe, possibly, when you look at SEO algorithm, where they're constantly, but they're looking for,
So it's basically a man-made divination,
yeah, it's a
whereas
human.
as divination that they used to do in the medieval period would be a god-made divination.
Yeah,
So yeah, okay. So we've turned ourselves into gods, and we can make divination.
I do think humans do go into a totally different area, though, on this one. I do think humans
Yeah, I
do
do.
have some form of God complex, some more than others. I would go down that road, but I do think because we feel we have that control and that ability to create,
Yeah,
there is a level of God complex in a lot of people, every person, I would say. There's that level of that to a greater or lesser degree, but that's something different to divination, if that makes sense. Because
I,
even in the Bible, there is divination. There's a set of sacred dice called the Urim and Thummim, which was, you know, it's documented in the Old Testament.
yeah. I just find it amazing that even the Chinese, they used to read patterns on tortoise shells.
Yeah.
It's like everything that had a pattern, they would try and read.
Yeah, so when you think about it cosmologically or on a grander scale, when you're looking at the weather and you're looking at the seasons changing and you're looking at the skies changing because because of the rotation of the Earth, and, they're looking at those and seeing patterns and taking messages from from those patterns
Mm.
and making
So yeah,
decisions on those images
yeah,
they're seeing, those patterns they're seeing. But humans, we know this about humans as well. This is another very, very we're talking very human factor on this one. Humans are designed to recognise patterns. That's part of what our brain does. Some are better at it than
yeah,
others. One of the very first patterns you see is the human face.
yeah,
Recognise. It's the human face. You recognise your mum. You recognise your dad. You recognise there's a difference between the two. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? It's one of the very first things that you are trained to do is see faces. Hence why we get pareidolia come in. We see faces in things that are not faces. How many photographs of ghosts in windows? Can you see the ghost in the window? Chances are it's pareidolia, but it might not be, but it probably is. You see a weird looking face in the woods. Oh, it's got to be a Bigfoot. Not necessarily. It's probably pareidolia.
Yeah.
There's a photo that's gone around recently, actually, and it turned out to be a tree stump, but it looked like a monkey in a snowy
Yeah,
forest.
there's another picture going around on social media as well of a dog running out of the woods, and it actually looks like a man running
Yes,
into the woods with a backpack on it.
yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one with a dog
It's
where it looks
interesting.
like a clown face. It's like a
Yes,
dog
that's
face and a
yeah,
clown face, and this is what your brain is doing. Your brain is not. There are loads and loads of types of pareidolia that your brain is set to. You have to be very careful with that. But because of this, people see patterns in things, and then they take the next step and start reading messages in that.
yeah. I think with that in particular, you had the dress, the coloured dress. Was it grey or gold or
Yeah.
people didn't see in different colours? And I do actually think it's almost like the frequency of what you because your brains work on different frequencies, so
Mhm.
that determines on what you see. So I'm leaning towards people can see and hear different frequencies because the older you get, the less frequencies you can hear,
Yeah.
and there's been tests on this, scientific tests. So I'm wondering whether or not pareidolia is the same, but more visual.
Quite possibly. I mean, all our organs deteriorate the older we get. Our hearing, our sense, our
Yeah,
smell, even our touch. Your skin gets hardened on your fingers and feet. All of those things, they deteriorate as you get older. As they deteriorate, you're more likely to make mistakes with what you
yeah,
recognise, yeah? So I don't see no reason why um, other senses, extra senses that we have, our sixth sense, if you like, becomes more fallible as we get older.
well, that's it. I mean, with the sounds, for example, I know that the younger your ears are,
Hmm.
the lower the frequencies you can hear. Again, that's been a scientific test, and the same with the different coloured dress or the shoes or whatever you might have seen on social media.
Hmm.
People, different age groups see different things. So, I'm again, it could be the same with the pareidolia, because sometimes I really have trouble finding these images.
Mm.
People say, "Oh, look, there's a dog," or you can see a face, and I'm like, "No, I just see trees. What are they talking about?"
Yeah. But I think
So I think it makes
once it's
yeah,
pointed out, then you see it, don't you? I think wasn't there a really one that stumped a lot of people? Was There's two actually I've got in mind on this one. It was like a cigar. It looked like a tortoise in a wall, but it was actually a cigarette coming out of the wall.
yes, I remember
A
that.
lot of people
Yeah,
couldn't see that. They couldn't
yeah,
work it out. That was one of them. And then there was another one which was to do with audio. pareidolia, which was what can you hear? It's the Yanni and the Laurel.
Yes, that
But
again, that was the sound frequencies, and so I think it pareidolia. If they looked into it more, I do think that they would find that maybe younger people were more affected by pareidolia than someone older.
so we're looking then at how a person, an individual person, interprets what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're
Is it?
experiencing.
Yeah, but is it interpretation or is it just the fact that your brain gets knackered and thinks, oh, yeah, it's just a tree?
Possibly a bit of both. I do think no.
Yeah,
I think it's how your brain is interpreting the signals,
yeah. It's
and
it's like when you're younger and maybe less knowledgeable, although younger people do know everything. I do realise that, um, but it's like yeah, when they see the tree and there's a face in it, their brain gets all excited and goes, "Oh look, a face in the tree." And then, as I said, when the older one comes up, it's like it's a tree. Just go away.
but I think
It's almost like that. But as you said, it's more frequency, isn't it? I think.
I do think though we take out that sixth sense. I do think we ignore as we get older. I think we ignore. I think sometimes you become more open to it
Mm.
if you're that way inclined. With your intuition, you trust it more, you believe it more. But I do think a lot of other people, generally, people dismiss that more as they get older. They're oh,
Yeah.
there ain't no more on earth than this, and whatnot. But I think in regards to divination, bringing this back to divination, it's the person, the individual person, the soothsayer, the seer, all of those kind of people interpreting what they're being told from their knowledge and their cultural basis and their experience and their sixth sense in the patterns in what they're seeing. So although you might get the chieftain, say for example, of an African reading bones, the normal person may not be able to do that because they're not
Yeah.
trained in that and they've not worked with that. They've not, working in that way. So I do think it's in regards to frequency and energy. Talk about tuning in. Mediums talk about it's like a badly tuned radio, don't they?
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and it's using that muscle. We talk about using our intuition and our sixth sense and our psychic abilities, if you like, as a muscle. If you don't use them, you lose them. The same as you would any muscle in the body. It's the same sort of thing. It's practice.
Mm.
It takes time to develop, and some people have automatically got it, and some people have to work at it. We all have an ability of some form, and it's how you use that. But in regard to divination, it would be how you interpret what's in front of you. Tarot cards have a general meaning, each card has a general meaning, but there's a hell of a lot more interpretation you can put on that beyond what the book says, as it were,
Yeah.
and that's down to individual person. Crystals, working with crystals is exactly the same thing. What I say the meaning
So
of a
isn't
crystal is will
isn't
be
like
personal.
isn't tarot reading then more like because I mean don't get me wrong, I don't know much about tarot reading, but as you said, there is a booklet that comes with the tarot set,
Yeah.
and it tells you in general what most of those cards mean. And I know that from conversations with you, even if they turn upside down and things, that's another message. So are you not sort of almost interpreting what that card says through what the booklet says and what you're sort of almost like cold reading from the person and mashing them together and coming up with your own reading for them?
In
Does that
regard,
make sense?
yeah, I understand what you're saying. In regards to tarot, there are different ways of doing it. You can learn the book, learn the meanings of each card, and read it literally by what the person who wrote the deck devised.
Right.
Because there are hundreds of different types of decks out there. Everyone comes with a little book. Everyone will have their own interpretation about what each card means. Yeah, depending on what deck you use. But
But
when
you're
you
still putting your own spin on it because you're reading for a certain person in front of you. So are you not also employing a bit of cold reading
depends.
and your feelings from them to put into what the card says?
I'm not going to discount that.
Okay.
I think there is part. I think that is partly. it, but a tiny part of it.
Yeah, I'm
Because
not saying obviously you do it maliciously or anything like that, because
no,
you have to look at the person and think, well, I don't know, if you're doing a reading for someone and they pull up, I don't know, a card saying that they're going to have a baby and it's like a bloke, it's like you've got to tailor it to them. And well, obviously you can't have the baby, but your missus might.
no, but I think in any of those circumstances, you wouldn't say you're going to have a baby. There's a baby coming around you. Would be
Yeah,
how you kind of would put it, because you don't know, even if that the person in front of you is of age and look, may not be able to have children. So you
yeah.
have to be diplomatic. You can't, the person, your mum's going to
So, but
peg
again,
it. You can't say stuff like that. You have to be
no, but
very.
then for me that's a bit general. That's almost like, I mean, I've had this experience before where you go to a medium and they've said, right, okay, well, I'm seeing a fireplace. Obviously, most people have got fireplaces, and on the fire mantelpiece above the fire, you should have a picture of your mum or your dad. And they go, well, no, I haven't got any pictures up. Oh, well, you should have pictures up.
I
It's
think
the same sort of thing, isn't it? But because obviously it's tarot, it's saying the same things, really, isn't it?
with tarot, you're interpreting the story that lays before you in the spread, because positioning of the cards have meanings too. We're going down into the tarot route. The positioning of the cards have a meaning as much as the cards themselves, but within the cards there's generally, depending on the deck, a hell of a lot of imagery as well. So when you're reading, although the person's in front of you, your focus isn't on the person, your focus is actually on the card. And different readings will, for different people, bring out different symbology and different imagery within the cards.
Yeah.
So when I'm reading, I focus so much on the spread in front of me, and I always say when I start reading, pay attention, I go hard and fast, because it's coming that fast. Bits are popping out the cards at me, different symbology is. Yes, I've got knowledge behind that, where I've learned positions of cards and various card meanings, and different suits mean different areas of their life and all that kind of thing. But in regards to tarot, the spread I do is quite a large spread. So I see a story. It's like it becomes like a story played out in front of me that's relating to the person who I'm reading for. So things that I know that if something's telling me about a three-way situation that had gone on in the past, it would be between three people. It was matters of business, for example. You know what I mean? I can pinpoint general area of life, and I can only talk from personal experience on tarot reading, because I know lots of people work in different ways. But this is where it becomes where it resonates with you and what works with you. I'm incredibly good, and I don't know why or how that works, about putting the right crystal with the right person. I've done this with pendulums,
Yeah.
particularly selling online. Oh, I need a pendulum. Okay, did you have anyone in particular? Because they can't try it, they go, oh, I don't know. And I go, I'm actually quite good at putting the right pendulum with the right person, or the right crystal with the right person, or the right combination for that person. And it seems to be like a little talent I have. I don't know how that works. All I know is that the validation I've had when I've done that, I've never had somebody say, no, I don't resonate at
So
all.
what crystal then would you put with me?
For you, I'm seeing at this point in time, because obviously you evolve and change and things change, you need more red crystals around you. So I really actually want to put you with a carnelian, because at the moment, oh God, I'm going into reading mode, Paul. Because you've got a lot of creativity, a lot of ideas at the moment, but you're not quite ready to put them into fruition. But they're there. You know what you want to achieve. You know where you're going, but you haven't quite got there to the point where you're ready to put them into practice, as it were. So,
Okay.
whereas before you would generally sit back on that, and everybody's going to argue, but you know him really well. He's one of your best friends. Paul is one of my closest friends, but there's a lot he doesn't tell me.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean? But these are things that are coming. They're not there yet. They're not quite ready to put into practice. But you've got the idea, and that creativity around that idea is not. Yeah, you're sort of on the cusp of it, but you're not quite ready to take the step into practicality.
Okay.
If that
Have
makes
I bought
sense.
any red crystals off you yet?
I think Lucy's got. Yeah, you have. You've got raspberry coming. haven't
Oh
you?
yeah.
You've got a
So,
raspberry
yeah.
sphere coming. But that's what I want to
Yeah.
put
Well,
around you at the moment. So you've got a lot of
okay.
growth area that's coming, but you're not quite ready to plant the seed to make it grow, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
all an
Yeah. No, that
internal
makes sense.
process at this moment in time. And
Okay.
how does, I
So
mean, that's
can
just
you
off,
can you do like tarot readings for people that are not with you,
yeah,
not sat in front of you?
yeah.
I reckon in the second half you should do me a reading.
I'll do your three carder.
Yeah, yeah, just a general one, and see, and then it's an experiment
Okay,
just to see if it comes to fruition.
I'll do you a three card reading
Yeah, cool.
after
So we'll
after the
do that in the
break.
yeah, we'll do that in the second half.
I'll have to grab my cards. They're-
That's what I said on the break.
yeah, because they're out of reach. But then
Give
you,
you time to prepare.
yeah, I'm quickly writing shit down as we're talking. No. But I mean, just on that, off the top of my head, I'm seeing that crystal for you. How did that feel for you? Was that, am I right? I don't know.
Well, yeah, no. To be fair, yeah, I've got a lot of ideas, and they're formulating at the moment, and it's not right to start them at this moment. So yeah, I get that. But then you knew that anyway. Um,
True.
as for that particular crystal, I actually looked at it and I liked it, and that's why I bought it. And you saying that is what you want to put around me at the moment. I just chose that because I liked it. So maybe it is that case of that's what's got to come into my life to help me prepare.
Who knows?
Exactly. So we'll see more when we do this reading.
But I think you can't underestimate the sophistication sometimes of divination. Whatever form of divination you use, there are hundreds of different forms of divination out there. You, and the roots of these divinations go back centuries. You know, they really do. And a lot of it was oral transmission, you know, like taught. You'd go to somebody and be taught it. So that a chieftain would take on an
Yeah.
apprentice and teach them the methods and stuff like that. And the work that goes into so you can tune in and do that as well is not simple sometimes. I mean, with tarot, I never used the book. Oh, well, I used to work with. I went to a guy who was a tarot master. I spent a lot of time with him, and he had his own methods, and I've gone away and evolved my own in tarot, and it was more of an oral learning than, oh, I'm reading the book.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I did do a bit of that when I very first got the deck. I think we all do that.
Yeah.
But sleeping with the Higher Arcana under my pillow, an individual card, I did a lot of that. Meditating with each card in particular, working in that way. So there is work
So
behind every
what
form
does
of
that do then? That you're
divination.
sleep. What does it do then with you sleeping with the card under your pillow? It's just
It's
what's that?
linking to the card in a non-boundary driven realm. So, like in your dreams, you're an open book effectively.
Mm.
Yeah, you're shut down from the external influences, and your brain is running free, as it were. By sleeping with a card, psychologically, you're putting that imagery into your brain before you go to sleep, right? Subliminal
Right.
messaging kind of scenario. But what lessons and what's being told to you whilst you have those dreams, whilst you've got that,
Mm.
sometimes are incredibly powerful in their own right. Now,
Yeah.
you can argue that you've primed your mind psychologically. That's what you want to dream about that night. Where, you know, say for example, the Hierophant. It's very Egyptian looking in the Rider-Waite deck. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could dream about Egyptians. You could dream about pyramids. You could dream about the Sphinx. You could dream about all that sort of imagery that's been triggered by your priming, your mind priming before you go to sleep. And I'm looking at this very coldly, very prosaically.
Yeah.
But when you wake up, you might then go, oh, I remember that. Write down your dream divination. This is another form of divination, dream divination, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know,
Absolutely.
and then people go, did you eat cheese the night before? Or, you know, things like that. But reading your dreams gives you a lot of insight, actually, into things like archetypal types come through in your dreams. Your brain sorting out day to day. So, I mean, I dreamt about orcas the other night. The dream I had actually was really strange. A lot
You
of
wasn't watching Free Willy by any chance, was you?
No, I wasn't, and I hadn't watched the Meg either or anything like that. But orcas were in it. There was some very horrific imagery in that, and
Yeah.
you write that down, and you can find the dream meanings and what it would make a great horror story. I actually thought, God, I should write this down. This would make a great book. Is actually what I thought when I come out of that dream. But dream divination linked to tarot, because you primed your mind before you've gone to sleep with the tarot card that you're working with, is quite powerful because it does bring a deeper understanding of the card's symbology and the imagery. And we go into realms of not quite understanding what your brain's doing. And because
Yeah.
the dream realm is one area. They've actually just done tests, haven't they, where they can interact with people in their lucid dream state.
Yeah, I actually read that the other day, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I mean, they didn't actually communicate verbally. They would just like ask simple maths questions, and through movements of people's eyes, they were actually getting the right answers. So it was like, although the brain wasn't active to be able to let them speak, it was active enough that in their rapid eye movement, they could actually communicate the right answers. And I thought that was actually quite fascinating because that could give them a whole massive insight into the brain, how it works when you're asleep, and what dreams are and stuff like that. So obviously, there's a lot of extensive more examinations and tests and things like that they could do. But yeah, it's a breakthrough at least. It's really good.
Yeah. So it's again, the dream world is kind of an unknown realm, really. We're only just starting to sort of like, I don't even know if we're an understanding of it. We have theories
No, I
around what
don't.
the
Well,
brain's doing while you're asleep and why we dream and stuff like that. But
mm,
it's again a fascinating realm. But
it,
dream divination is another
it
form
is.
of
It's just a
divination.
concept, isn't it?
It's another
The dream
concept.
world is just a concept because we don't know, and all we're doing is just dreaming of, things we've done during that day, or we have nightmares, reoccurring dreams, and stuff like that, and we don't actually understand what the dream world is.
No, no,
But this could be a breakthrough to find out actually once and for all what is the dream world.
yeah. I mean, you also have to understand that modern day, back in the day, it was very individual divination. So it would be an individual person divining. It would be like the soothsayer, the priest, shamans, chieftains. Those kind of people would have almost exclusivity in
Yeah,
regards to divination. It only became a general thing in world until when the printing press was invented, and it became more worldwide. It became more accessible to people with the
yeah,
invention of the printing press, and different forms of divination then become more integral. We only found out about I Ching from the Chinese dynasties because of the printing press.
yeah,
You think the Chinese actually invented paper about 2,000 years ago.
yeah. They didn't have anything to print, no, but they invented it.
Well, one of the first things that was printed was actually I Ching.
Yeah,
And when you think about that, that's when you started seeing things like card decks and tarot decks and things like that come into play, and knowledge being able to be put down and made accessible to people beyond the individual personal's work, like writing book or mass-produced Bibles that have been handwritten out and stuff like that. The printing press really exploded literary understanding and knowledge
yeah.
a
It
lot
made
more
made it
widespread.
accessible to everybody.
Very much so. And then people were able to translate ancient texts,
Mm.
and write about them in different languages and stuff. So again, we come down to that translation factor, don't we? And we've seen that that's
Yeah,
not always infallible either. When Zachariah Stitchin was translating some hieroglyphics, from the Mesopotamian era. I believe this is where the ancient alien theory come. He didn't translate it correctly. This is why we've now got these people saying no, he wasn't right because he translated it wrong. But look at where the ancient alien theory's gone. That bred a
Yeah,
whole world, but that actually
but then
exploded
but
off
then
the back of
sometimes it
something he
actually does make
translated wrong.
sense.
In some ways, it
Yeah,
does.
but it does actually make sense sometimes. Yeah,
But then you
yeah.
get
I mean,
into, again, going
I
back to
don't buy it.
conspiracy theory. Does it make sense, or are we just trying to make sense of what we've got that we don't understand?
Well, no, I mean, it does obviously bring into question some of it, but there are bits and pieces that, do actually make sense. Um, and I know one of the biggest theories out there was that, I think, wasn't it King Ramesses II hieroglyphs of um, a modern day helicopter. But when you look at it,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was actually what they used to do was they used to overwrite
yeah.
some of the hieroglyphs. And I can't remember the other king, but it was like King Ramesses II and another one.
It was ISIS.
They just overlapped their writings, their hieroglyphs.
Yeah,
And it does actually, when you put two of them together, it does actually look like a helicopter, but
it
it isn't.
does.
That,
And there's a belief that
but
that is
there's a lot
out
of
there
people out
on
there that
several
still,
different monuments, and it's not. It's one.
yeah. And there are still some really, popular paranormal investigators out there that actually do believe that it's a helicopter. And we're like, hello, research.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
definitely.
does make you laugh, definitely.
And there's even some people were arguing there's a temple in Cambodia that's got an engraving of what looks like a dinosaur,
Mm,
right? Now, in that area, they did have rhinoceroses.
yeah.
Rhinoceri? I don't know what the right word is for that.
Rhinos, we go with
Yeah,
that one.
rhinos. So archaeologists have said it could be their very basic interpretation of what they were seeing, which would be a rhinoceros, right?
Yeah.
That's how they carved it. But also, things like it had been used as a film set for several films.
Mm,
One of them being Tomb Raider, just one of the films that this temple had been used for. And they actually think it could possibly be a kind of like joke from the film crew that were there as well.
oh,
So almost like a bad taste kind of
mm.
um, uh, graffiti almost. So they're not discounting that side of it either. Somebody's put that out there. But again, there's loads of people, wow, there's a dinosaur on this and there's a dinosaur on that. And there are some strange imageries, but you've got to take it
But
back
at the
to the
end of the
time it
day,
was printed. Our understanding is
dinosaurs,
different.
dinosaurs did exist, so it depends on what context that they were put on the wall for.
Yeah, whether they would have seen them, because they
You
argued
know,
that they only carved
they
what they
could have just
saw.
uncovered dinosaur bones and thought, oh no, I'll draw a picture of what I think they look like.
Who knows? But it's again we go back down to how fallible our interpretation can be on ancient things. So we look at modern day people always forget to put themselves in the time, the political, the cultural influences of the day of what you were looking at.
Mm.
Um, it's not so bad in the past couple of 100 years, even going back probably to Tudor times, I'd say, but going back further than that, you can't judge somebody's decision making process because you weren't there.
Yeah.
We can't understand Stonehenge because we weren't there. We don't know why. We don't know. We think a lot of things. We've got a lot of theory about it, but we don't know.
No, that's it, and that's why it's all. That's why it's in the public eye a lot because it is being examined by the historians, and they're coming up with new theories, and then there's someone out there that would debunk them, and that's how it goes, and that's how we will eventually get to the truth.
Eventually. And this is why
Yeah.
people make mass assumptions. I mean, they're now thinking that Stonehenge actually was actually erected in Wales to start with, and then got transported to where it is now.
Yeah, but then
Initially
that's.
on
I mean, that's
archaeological
indicative
evidence.
though of most things nowadays.
Mm.
When you buy things flat pack, They would have made it at one point and gone, yeah, that's good quality control, that works. We'll use that, and then they start selling their beds and things flat pack, and then you never receive them.
Yes, which is what I'm going through at the moment.
Yeah, it's like that's what it is. I think it was
Yeah.
just made. Maybe it was the IKEA's first table or something. They
Whatever
just got
way,
the specs wrong.
whatever kind of method you use, though, generally they're very complex. They've been developed over hundreds and thousands of years from many different cultures, and we're gonna. We haven't even started on the research yet, but this is one of the areas, isn't it, that you can talk about for a long time and go off into different rabbit holes with. We've
Yeah,
actually come
that's
to the
it.
end of the first half.
Oh, we're getting closer to this reading.
We are getting close to this bit. I'm going to go and dig my tarot cards out just while you lot have a little listen to this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept show, right here on the PAUK radio network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK radio network.
Okay, so where do we go from now?
Right, do you want me to do this reading for you? Let's get that out of the way before we go further into it.
Yeah, let's start with that, and then we can see what's what.
What's occurring in Paul Rook's
Start the
life?
experiment. Start the experiment. Love a good experiment, especially live on air, so everyone's a part of it.
Yeah, why not? Oh, God. Right, I'm just doing a 3-card reading, nothing major. Right. Okay, so you've got 3 higher arcana cards coming through, which basically indicates massive life changes coming forward for you. Now, firstly, there is a lot of what you've worked for you're going to get. So how much work you put in is what you're going to get out of it. But justice is a very strange thing. And sometimes it doesn't always play out how you think it should. We look at this in regards to a good analogy of that is look at the justice system. Somebody commits a crime, you don't think that the punishment fits the crime. But it is what it is. There's nothing you can do. It's very cold. What you put in, you get out on the justice card. So the harder you work, the more you're going to get, basically. You have to have really strong, logical, rational thought processes. So don't from my perspective, I would say don't overinvest in anything. Be very sure what you invest and where you invest it. And that's not just monetary, but that would be emotionally as well. Try and see things for what they are, because things don't always balance out. You have to have equal investment in things emotionally, if in that respect. Okay. Now the colour red is coming through for you very strongly on this card. We've talked about that orangey red colour of creativity, and again, be very careful what you're investing into that. Make sure that it's rational. Don't overspend in ways that won't pay out in the future. So be very, very careful on that one. But you have got a good understanding behind that. So your thought patterns are quite rational, but just be very, very aware of this, the coldness of justice. So make sure you put in. Now, your next card, build the foundations. Make sure you really build those foundations before you take the next step on whatever area of life that it is you want to do. Foundations are what keep you sturdy and steady. If you build a house on land that will landslide, it'll all fall down. Whereas if you build the bedrock and build the foundations properly, then it's likely to stay upright more. So this is about planning. This is about good investment. This is about thinking things through properly, making sure that you don't just sort of go, you're not in a situation where you can go, yeah, whatever, put it in the fuck it bucket kind of scenario. Do you know what I mean? You need to be sure about what you're doing and build those foundations before you do. Otherwise, it will come crumbling down around you, and it will bring down a lot more than you think. it could change your entire life on that one. So you definitely have to build those foundations strongly, and that's a lot of it is the pre-work you have to put in beforehand. Going forward, not so bad a future if you do all these things and look at all these the planning stage very, very carefully. So it's, if you do that, you could come out shining and smelling of roses, as it were. But make hay while the sun shines. So be flexible. Make sure that you've got the contingencies. Don't get stuck into one thought pattern. So you don't need to be controlled in a way. You need to have that flow. Be prepared to evolve and move beyond your comfort boundaries in that. So you need to be very aware that as the seasons change, business changes, money changes, relationships change, and be prepared to flow with that. But generally the future is looking good if you build your foundations strongly and keep the emotion out of it and make sure that it's equal investment going through. And this is on all areas of your life, because you're in higher arcana, not just specific areas. I would say for you, knowing what I know about you, always build those foundations strong, and then you generally won't go wrong and you can flow with the change better.
Excellent. Sounds good.
Don't jump into babies too soon. Just saying.
No, definitely not.
So just on a 3-card
not
spread.
for a while yet.
No, on a 3-card, and that's what I mean by it's not always that specific. I've got 3 higher arcana cards which delve into various stages of journey through life. Yeah, they will represent various stages we all go through at different times. We've all had times in our life where, for example, we felt that we haven't had the justice we deserve. We've worked hard for something and haven't got the promotion. We've put a lot into a relationship and didn't get it, failed. Do you know what I mean? So justice is a very strange scenario, and the best analogy is to look at it as the justice system. You do not always get out what you truly deserve out of a situation, but you get what's right out of the situation. Now, in regards to the next arcana card, the Tower, we've all had situations where it's all gone horribly wrong. We've lost everything we worked for. Correct? That's a rite of passage that's happened several times in my life. I feel like a little bit like I'm going into that again. But we've all had times where that's happened, where everything has gone horribly wrong, and all of a sudden our life purpose has flipped and we've ended up on a different pathway because everything went wrong. You think you're settled in a job, the next day you get made redundant, flip of a coin kind of scenario. That's what the Tower is, a stage, or a higher arcana is a stages, are rites of passage throughout life, and you've got 3 of them. And the Sun, we all have times of periods of our life where everything is flowing beautiful, everything's sunny and wonderful, and we can't see it getting any better than it is, but we also know that's fleeting as well. So rites of passage, enjoy each stage as they come, and they all serve a purpose. But you've got 3 life lesson cards on the table here in front of me.
Okay.
So they're quite profound. So whatever steps you make next, make sure you put the work in, you'll get the results you deserve out of it. Make sure you put the foundations in, so if it all goes horribly wrong, you don't lose everything. And thirdly, enjoy the fun enjoy the good times when they're there.
Yeah.
That's basics on that one.
Okay.
So that's
interesting.
Yeah. Do the work.
Cool. So this time next year I'll be on millionaire.
Nothing about money in there, darling, at all. These are life passages. Make hay while the sun shines. But be prepared to evolve. Life flows. You have ups and downs and backs and forths, but you do get out of life what you put into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is that side of it as well.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So it was a little quickie for you.
Yeah.
If I was doing a deeper spread, I could pinpoint more areas, and it's quite unusual actually to get 3 higher arcana cards out in.
That's because I'm special.
That's what you think at the moment. Just remember that Tower card. That's all I'm saying.
Think about me, so I might as well think about myself.
I think about you.
Yeah, you don't sound special.
I drag you down various pathways you never thought you'd travel.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah. That's it.
Oh dear.
Especially the spiritual one the other last year. Yeah, that was interesting as well. Okay, so we'll see what comes to fruition, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on that.
We certainly shall. There's rites of passage. So when you're going through your bad time, I'll be going, yes, the tower. Told you
Yeah,
so.
told ya.
Or you don't get what you did think you deserve. I'll be like, there's the justice.
Yeah,
And when you're going through good times, I'll be like, there's the sun.
yeah. That's it. Nothing like covering your back there, is there?
Well, I can't pull out the cards. They come out as they do. I shuffle the deck, I laid them out, and that's what come up.
No, that's fine. If it's special that it come out like that, that's good enough for me.
That's how it should be, right?
Exactly. Nothing but the best.
There are 5 forms of divination that are called the classical divinations now, or they're kind of viewed generally and used a lot. One of those is astrology, another is numerology, then there's I Ching, the runes, and tarot. They all thrive in modern day divination methods, and you just had a little example of tarot, but I Ching's very big. And I didn't know a lot about I Ching. I know it's Chinese, obviously, but that goes back thousands of years, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does go back. And I think as well from another documentary that I was watching about the Shang dynasty, they didn't actually know anything about that dynasty until they found some divination tools that they used. And then because it was bones that had written the inscriptions on, and from what the questions they were asking, and the answers are coming back because they read the cracks in the bones.
Yeah.
And then they'll put the answers down on the bone as well. So you got the question, the means of divination, and the answer all in one. So they learned a lot about this Shang dynasty, and I think that was just before the Qing one.
No, that came. The problem is with all forms of divination, they're generally shrouded in mystery of where they started. You can't pinpoint exactly. So and so made this up. Do you know what I mean? I mean, with tarots and things like that, we can trace certain decks back to when they first got published and who wrote them, and things like that. But the earliest forms of divination we haven't. They're shrouded in mystery and obscurity. It's so far back in history, and nobody thought, oh well, on this day so and so decided to read bone cracks, and this is where it's come from. It's one of those mystery things, and folklore and legend surround the beginnings of these kind of forms of divination.
Yeah.
In particular, the I Ching, which is basically, it goes down to lines of stacked, solid or broken lines, and that reflects the yin and the yang. You know what the yin is and the yang is, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
The perfect balance, the duality that drives the universe. And acceptance of a little bit of bad in the good and a little bit of good in the bad. You can always turn positivity out of bad situations, and in the good, you're always looking for something that's going to soil the situation. That's a human nature thing, but keeping balance in is what drives the universe. It's always striving for perfect balance, and this is where this comes from. Now, the legend of this is that we've got a hero. Gotta love a hero. Fuzai.
Yeah, you can't have a good story without a hero.
No, we have this hero. A dragon or a snake with a human face. That's what Fuzai was. Now, he studied, or it studied, it's a chimera basically, studied the patterns of nature in the sky and earth alongside natural things like birds, rocks and animals, movement of clouds, arrangement of stars. And he basically discovered that everything could be reduced to 8 trigrams. And this is where the lines of, where when you look at it, you're looking at broken lines and stacked. And they all have meaning.
Yeah.
Okay, these all have a meaning. The trigrams have a meaning. And then they broke those trigrams down into areas. So in regards to the I Ching, it's heaven, lake, fire, thunder, wind, water, mountain, and earth. Right, so those areas then represent various elements and various impacts on various parts of your life. See what I mean? Can get quite complex, right? So that's sort of the basics of it. Now, from there, he then went into how that overlaid onto humans.
Yeah.
Right, so he then related that to the effect it has on our existence and the impact it has on us individually.
I'll say the Chinese writing's really complicated.
Totally. There were 64 different combinations. They all have different names, and they have oracles known as judgments.
Yeah, so I can see the thunder in that image that you shared for your research. I can see that symbol inside the writing, but I can't for the others, for the fire, mountain and earth.
No, but you've also, like I said with divination, each method, whatever method you use, it's not a 5-minute thing. There is a lot of deep understanding of what each symbol means. We go into symbology. Symbols are incredibly powerful in their own right, and this is where we talk about energy being put onto a symbol, right? When you're looking at symbology, some symbols have been used for so many years by so many people that they become an energy imprint, which is what makes them powerful. And our association with symbols, depending on what culture you're grown up with, will indicate how powerful they are to an individual. Again, patterns. Do you see? And this is where science kind of doesn't integrate very well with the human factor. We keep going back to the human factor. The importance it is for an individual person is very individual. It's so unique to a person. What symbols are important to me and resonate for me will be different from what they resonate for you. So the meaning of that becomes different for you as it does for me. Even though
I think I struggle with this resonance stuff, and I don't really get divination at all.
No, but I think you do in a way.
It's something that I'm interested in, definitely. As you know, I'm looking into the runes. I haven't looked at it recently because I've been really busy at work. But, that's something that interests me greatly. And, I've bought runes off of you anyway.
Yeah.
And our producer, Andy, he's into the occult, and he's given me some recommendations for books, which I've also bought. So it's something that I'm going to pick up and learn about more, but it's just having the time at the moment. But yeah, it's just something that fascinates me. It really does.
It is about...
It just confuses me at the moment.
I see, for you, okay, let's break it down. We talk about... And actually, this brings a past life link in, because people believe that the area or period of history you resonate to, or cultural influence you resonate to, is a possibility that at some point you had a past life in there.
Right, okay.
So for you like and resonate and feel an affiliation to Norse, that area.
Yes and no. I mean, because I like ancient civilizations, and it isn't just the Norse; it's the Romans, the Greeks, also Aztecs, and obviously Norse as well.
But you're more likely to pick up a divination method that links back to Norse than to a divination method linked perhaps to the Aztecs or Mayans.
Yeah.
Or the Greeks. You like the Greek mythology side of it, the belief system side of the legends and the stories, but in regards to practical methods, you resonated more with the runes.
Yeah.
And that tells a tale in itself. I resonated more with tarot than I do with other. I've tried runes.
Okay.
I gave my runes away because I didn't resonate with them. I couldn't work.
Didn't give them to me, did you?
No, I gave them to Tom, believe it or not. And I had the books and all sorts of, and going through the books and that, it just, I was like, oh, no, can't be doing with it. And yet tarot, I've worked with now for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, 30 odd years I've worked with tarot, and I don't get tired of it. It sticks with me. And I've tried oracle decks, I've tried different decks, but I'll go back. There's 2 decks I use continually. One's the Greek, funny enough, the Greek mythological deck, and one is the Rider-Waite deck.
Okay.
And as I say, I've tried other forms of divination. I don't work particularly well with dowsing rods, yet Richard works incredibly well with dowsing rods.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
You know, that's a form of divination. It's finding something that's hidden. It's finding a pattern where they're, you know, in things, and finding a meaning behind that. And so, you know, there's that train of thought that what you've been exposed to in the past is what you will bring through into your present. So for you may well have had a past life experience, if you want to believe in past lives, and then that brings you into reincarnation. But again, it's a belief system. You may well have you may work well with runes and be drawn to that because you've done it before.
Yeah.
You may not. It might just be something that you like the look of.
Yeah.
Without regressing or anything like that, we wouldn't know.
Yeah, I would like to do this past life regression stuff as well. That's always fascinated me. Well,
we know a man who can.
We do. We also know an expensive man that can. I'm looking for a cheaper man that can.
Bless. If you're going to jump properly, then you've got to pay the money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, maybe one day.
We've also interviewed somebody who does past life regression.
When I've built up a really good business with good foundations and stuff, and I'm a millionaire, then I'll contemplate it.
There's a song.
When I make my first million, I'll do it.
All right. But this is where it gets complicated. When you look at I Ching or astrology, when we did a show ages ago on astrology, oh my God. Again, different forms of astrology are within that. There's not just one type of astrology. Yeah. I thought, come off the back of Chinese New Year, we said we'd never do it again because it is so complicated. And there isn't just like, I thought there was just like, you know, various animals that meant various things, but there isn't. There's like different elements linked to the different animals that sit in different houses that, oh my God, it gets really complicated. Yeah. And the same for I Ching. It's not a simple form. It's a lifetime study.
It is, definitely. And it's still interesting, but...
Incredibly interesting.
Yeah. It's exhausting.
Unless you've got that real interest in it. Like, you know, you get people that are really interested in World War II. Yeah? They'll know roughly about other worlds, but if they've got that you've precision focus, don't you, on the area that interests you the most. Now, for me, regarding the paranormal, mine's a broad spectrum. I haven't got a specific area that I specialise in.
Mm-hmm.
But I like all areas. So I dip in to various topics on different areas, a lot of them interlinked.
I think your focus is more spiritual. That would be where your expertise lies.
I bring that into the paranormal, but I see that as a different...
It's still paranormal, but it's still your focus within it. Do you know what I mean? I think that's your focus because you do bring spiritualism in. But at the same time, you also, as an investigator, you don't always jump to that conclusion.
No.
And you do question and do everything else that an investigator would, which is, again, is a good thing, you know. So, but when it's needed, you do bring in spiritualism. So I think that's where your talent lies.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I kind of see them as two separate things. My expertise in crystals and spiritualism, I'm an expert, everybody, wrong term there, my knowledge, shall I say, in that side of things, I kind of, although I bring it into the paranormal field, I see the paranormal field, my knowledge in regards to the paranormal field is different. Yes, they cross over a lot, a hell of a lot, but I kind of see them as two different kind of areas. There are things
Yeah.
I want to try in the field that I haven't tried in regards to what I do. I want to cross it over probably more, but I haven't done that yet because obviously the last year, a lot of plans the beginning of last year have been put on hold, haven't they?
Yeah, you
Shelved
did.
for the time being.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different things, different ways of working that I'd not tried in the field that I'm going to bring into the field. But it would be a different way of reading because I wouldn't be reading for a physical person.
Yeah.
I'd be reading for a possible spirit person. That's even if spirits exist.
Exactly. Yeah. But it'd be interesting to see where that reading would come from.
It would be interesting. That's why I think it would be interesting to try, and that's all I can say is it would be interesting.
Mm. But again, that's where you're bringing. Okay, you're not an expert, but it's your expertise.
That's believing in the
that's,
field.
yeah, I know there's a big question out there about are there experts in the paranormal, and to be fair, when it comes to crystals, I personally would call you an expert because you know what you're talking about when it comes to crystals. There's not much you don't know, and if you don't know something, then you will go and find out the answer, which is something that we all should do. And I would still class you as an expert. So yeah, you can have experts in the field. Might not be an expert at everything, but they could have honed their expertise. I mean, like me, for example, I'm a qualified first aider and right up to the ambulance tech side of things. So that qualifies me as an expert in what I do. So, but I'm still in the paranormal, so that means I'm an expert in the paranormal, not of the paranormal, in the paranormal.
And there we go with interpretation again.
Yeah.
Because I would interpret what I do differently to how Paul would interpret that on me, and vice versa. Do you know what I mean? It's again we're back down to interpretation, isn't it?
It is.
It just shows you how broad a spectrum just that one thing interpretation is. And going back to I Ching, the legend of that. I don't know who did that. There's no Fu Ching or Fu Zai or whatever his name was that has, when you look at the description of him, it's chimera. And then you could look into Greek mythology with that. That goes on to Greek mythology, a dragon, a snake and a human face. And Egyptology. We were talking to Matt Arnold, who were talking about beings of angels that were four-faced.
Yeah. But yeah, as you said, sometimes it does come down to not just the interpretation, but the way it's described as well. Because again, with experts, you could have an expert in archaeology, right? We know you can have an expert in that because it is a qualified skill. But if you asked him a question about astrology, something that's right out of his field of expertise, he wouldn't have a clue. So he's not that much of an expert. But you could still have him an expert on an astrology expedition.
But you have got, even within, say, archaeology, you would have experts in regards to specific areas.
Yeah.
You would, within that umbrella term, you've got experts within their own area.
Yeah, so like a Victorian expert or...
Yeah.
You see it all the time in antiques. Antique experts. You get experts on militaria. You get experts on gold and silver. You get experts on, I don't know, children's toys. And so, yeah, you do. You get loads of different experts.
Oh, I've gone down a
It's the
different
same.
rabbit hole there, haven't we?
Yeah. Divination is divining with them. No, that's...
Yeah. But whatever area, whether it's the paranormal, whether or not it's, an academic, or whether or not it's divination, it takes years of study and understanding to understand, to become that level of knowledgeable about something. We do a lot of research on lots of different topics to do with the paranormal. We're not experts, and within expertise, you're still learning. Even an expert will come across things that they don't know, that they'll have to go and research, and how that crosses over into other fields. I mean, I think
Just look what happened with the historians. That the experts in historians didn't know anything about the Shang dynasty until someone said, "What's all this about on this bone?" They looked at it and discovered there was the Shang dynasty.
Exactly.
And that's all the information they have on them. So, even the experts can be wrong.
Again, ever changing, ever evolving situations. They didn't know where Richard III was buried, and then they found him.
Yeah, in a car parking space under the letter R.
So...
Someone knew. Someone knew that.
Well, they did back in the day when it happened, but it wasn't recorded anywhere until they found him.
No, I still think someone knew it. So, maybe he was a keeper of the grave or something. And he knew where it was. That's why I made it into a car parking space with the letter R on it.
I am here. But again, there is a legend that was found through somebody dowsing.
Yes, there was, I remember reading that as well.
It's not really talked about. And a lot of these things, there's another one.
It's not an exact science, though, is it?
No.
So we're not going to sort.
King Arthur was supposed to be found. There was a grave in Glastonbury Abbey that was supposed to have been found through dowsing methods. And again, not really talked about now. Because it's not an exact science, and so he hit pay dirt this time.
Yeah.
But how many times did he not hit pay dirt?
King Arthur's a sore subject for me.
Why?
Well, I went down to Cornwall. I visited Tantage Hall, and I went to it was like a makeshift museum all about King Arthur, and they claimed they had the stone. I'm sure it was. I don't know whether it was a stone of his story or birthplace or something. It was a big stone. It had engravings on it, and they said it was associated to King Arthur. I don't know whether it might have even been the sword and the stone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But they had it. You go outside of this museum, and you go down like this bank towards a small river. And as I was walking down, they had the steps were like dirt steps, but had the bit of wood going across on the corners. And as I put my foot on it, it was rotted and it just gave way. Nearly broke my neck going to see that.
I'm laughing, but it's not funny.
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
is.
Everyone else who was with me was laughing. That sword was handy. It would have been a mass murder. That hurt a tiny bit, obviously.
Yeah, I think so. But you swore a bit about that.
I did. I used a few choice words. Luckily enough, there was no children around to hear them.
Thank goodness. Mind you, I have to say, it, in situations like that, it doesn't matter, does it?
No, I would not care, to be fair.
I think my children learn all sorts of words they shouldn't have learned through various times of me hurting myself at times.
Yeah.
Anyway, where was we? So
yeah.
Yes.
And Merlin used divination tools as well.
Allegedly so, but we don't know if he was a real character. I mean,
he
according
was,
to legend...
Oh, you're... He reincarnated me. Yeah. We'll go with that.
All right.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? Why not, indeed. I do think it's a lifetime study. I think, we go back to a lifetime study of various aspects, and you can, even in the education system, the higher up you go, it becomes more pinpointed on area of study. So like you go to like general education, then you go into A levels and you sort of hone it down a little bit more into topic, and then you go into degree and it becomes more pinpointed onto area of study, doesn't it? And each time you go up a level, as it were, you are honing down to a specific area that you find of most interest. Or, you know, and every branch of understanding, there are different pathways you can take to it. You know, like we talked about astrology, you can go to Chinese astrology, you've got Western astrology, you've got so many different methods of astrology, which we found in the astrology show. And nowadays, I think the astrology perspective is we read our star sign in the paper. So general. That could relate to any star sign going, quite frankly. I think they did a test on that as well. They did a scientific... They got a load of people, different star signs, gave them all the same, you know, reading for that particular star sign for that particular day in the newspaper kind of thing. And they all said it related to them. And yet they were all different star signs.
Yeah. I mean, I must admit, I've always wondered with that... I think it was you that I was actually talking about it, about having star signs starting 9 months earlier, not actually when you was born, but when you was conceived.
Isn't that Korean?
Yeah, but then didn't you read out the star sign that you would have been if it started at 9 months earlier? Mm-hmm. And you actually decided that, yeah, actually there is something in it because it did represent something different in your life.
Yeah, it represented something different. But again, with astrology, most people will go the star sign in the newspaper kind of scenario. That is such a diluted form of astrology. If you had a reading done, you know, you can get birth readings done where they look at the star positioning and that goes into houses and different areas of life, and they can do life of basically how your life will plan out based on your birth moment, and that's down to seconds. You know, you've got to provide the date of birth, the time of birth, and then they can do a reading on that. This is Western, and they do it from the point of birth, whereas I think they go back further, like you say, to the point or the rough point of conception, if you knew it. Although I have to say, if you're trying for a baby, it could be any time at any point in a week. Do you know what I mean? You're banging that out. There's an expression for you. There's an expression for you. So it is, again, if you study astrology properly, it's not as easy as just what your star sign says. That's just one tiny aspect of a whole massive topic. And I say, whenever I've looked at astrology, oh God, not something I resonate. Again, another area of divination I don't resonate with. I can't get my head around going back. You have to go back in time and look at where the stars were and work all that out. And it's very complicated. Again, very complicated, very obscure way of reading somebody's life path, life pattern. And, you know, when you do readings, sometimes you've got readings for life or a year ahead or your life plan in regard to astrology. And sometimes you can get it down to 3 to 6 months. And the further you go, particularly with tarot, the further you go, try and read for, the harder it gets. It's more obscure, the harder it gets. With astrology, I've heard reports of people having a life plan and it's worked out exactly as it is. But then you go to your train of thought where you go, because they knew that, because they've got this life plan in front of them, have they manifested that? Because that's what they're supposed... I don't know.
I mean, if you're told in your life plan that you're going to be a policeman, for example, you know that's where you're heading, so you take all the courses and all the exams and everything you need to get to be that position in life, don't you? You know, where if you just let it flow without knowing, what's the chances of you being a copper?
Maybe you don't consciously do it, though. Maybe it becomes part of your subconscious. It sits bubbling away. So when you make life decisions, you're not consciously going, well, my reading said that, so I've got to do it. But because it's then deep in your subconscious, that's where you do it. I mean, going into things like dowsing or pendulum reading, we come up against the term of the ideomotor effect, or idiomotor effect, which is unconscious movements are making the pendulum or the dowsing rods move in a specific way. We talk about this in terms of Ouija, don't we, when we talk about the Ouija board, that you are the one creating that, or the human pendulum, things like that. This effect comes into place, where subconsciously you're making minute movements which then move the tool that you're using and gives you the answers that you may not expect because they're deep subconscious. So in effect, you're tuning into your deep subconscious to get you answers. So even if you're on the board, for example, it could be going crazy on the board, but ultimately you're the one causing that effect. And we did an interesting experiment. We was at Kelvedon Hatch. We weren't getting a lot of movement on the board, generally, by just calling out and doing the thing that you do on the board. So we did an experiment, and I said to there was only 2 people on the board, and I said, think of your happiest moment, and it started to move a lot more. And then I said, right, think about the worst time of your life, right? And it went stronger because people focus on negative more than positive. And that's why you get a stronger response in regards to negative. If you then perceive you've got a negative spirit, you will tend to get a stronger response on the board, which is what freaks people out more.
Yeah.
When it's actually your subconscious negativity or negative emotional response coming through more than your positive. It's really strange when you start doing little experiments like that.
Yeah, it is an interesting concept, definitely.
But
and it does work, like you said.
But we also have had times on the Ouija board where, and you can verify this, you've had information, words spelled out on the board that spell out information that you didn't know about a person and the person didn't know about you.
Yes, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there you go, there's your step into something else is going on. If I don't know the answer, if you're asking spirit for, I don't know, how did you die? And it says, I don't know, murdered, for example, on the board, but you didn't know the history of that place.
Yeah.
And then they give you a name and it's the right name connected with that murder. That's when it becomes interesting. The answers that come out are interesting.
Yeah, when we was on the board at one of the locations we had, it was a place where they had antiques, actually. And one of the spirits that come on the board, he told us what his name was, and he said that he's connected to one of the items in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a fob watch, like a pocket watch. And we said, is there any inscriptions on the back? And he said, yeah. And he gave us the inscription on the back through the board. We actually looked for this watch and we found it. And sure enough, it had the exact inscription that he said was on the back of it. Now, for me, that's validation that communication was for a spirit.
Because you didn't even know the fob watch was there at the time when you were doing the board.
No, I didn't. No.
And for the initials to match what came out in the board. So something's going on deeper than your inner movements, your inner thoughts that are creating minute movements. And sometimes when you're getting great responses on a board or a pendulum, or even the answers that are coming out are more interesting than the actual thing you're doing. We kind of can explain it. We explain it in spiritual terms as spirit are affecting you to make those movements to get the right response. So they're actually working through your energy field for you to move the board so they can give you the answers. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's how we explain it spiritually. The answers that come out, you have to be discerning in regards to the information that does come out. The people on the board you have to know and trust. Do they know that information that's coming out on the board? If something comes out that you know for a fact none of you knew, that makes it interesting. What is going on there? If you know you didn't know it, But then again, you could argue you may well have known it and just don't know you know it. You think you know,
Yeah.
but you don't.
Well, I can verify that I didn't know that watch was there, and the people that was with me again, they only just turned up a little bit before, so they really didn't know either.
No.
And I trust them. You know that's why they're part of my team, because I trust them.
Exactly.
If we do ever catch anyone out that does lie, even if it's nothing but to do with paranormal, you know, if they lie about something else in their home life or whatever, you know, I don't trust them after that, because if they're willing to tell one lie, they're willing to tell another.
It is about team. You know, you've got to trust the team that you work with in the field. If you're going to do experimentation like this, and you can't, again, you have to be very discerning in regards to the information that comes through. You have to trust, when I read the tarot cards, that I'm not going on what I know. I mean, when I read from my best friend, and every time I always have to say, when I'm reading, several times in the reading, I'll be like, but I kind of know that. Do you know what I mean? I know,
Yeah.
I kind of know this is when I do a bigger reading rather than a 3-card. I know that. So I don't know, am I putting my knowledge overlay on what I'm reading here? But then I can't deny that that's what the card's indicating as well.
Yeah.
And I have
Definitely.
read for her in certain ways that has come to fruition further along that we didn't know. I said at one point she'd be dealing with contracts, and she was nowhere near contracts. She wasn't dealing with any of that at the time. And she was like, nah. And she does now. The job changed, and she's now dealing with contracts, which she never thought she would do. She's had to learn a whole different job effectively to deal correctly with contracts. So, you know, when you start looking at it in the same way as we look at manifestation or magic, yes, you have to have a great deal of discernment and knowledge about what could be going on, but there are still things that happen that you think it's beyond coincidence, it's beyond what fits, you know. And when you look at any form of divination, it's generally steeped in history, generally steeped in ancient times. Knowledge has been passed down verbally before it got written down, so it becomes obscure. And then we talk about introduce your sixth sense. Say what, you know, with tarot in particular, it's say what you see, what's jumping out at you at the card, you know, what does that mean to you? Spirit are going to give you that message through what you're seeing, if you believe in spirit, you know, but you kind of have to put a belief system on sort of like a sabbatical while you're doing it, and then leave it there and see what happens. The same with magic. You don't become attached to the outcome. I've talked about this quite a lot recently. With manifestation work or any form of this, it's great. Go for a reading, but take it for what it is. Don't become attached to the outcome, and then hindsight becomes a wonderful tool to look back on.
It does, definitely. It's certainly interesting.
Definitely. And you can make your own tarot cards. I mean, tarot readings, origins, basically don't really start until printing comes through and card decks came through. Cartomancy was actually with just a general playing deck. We didn't have some of the character cards like, you know, the Knight, King, Queen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They weren't brought in until later. And they were just symbols on a card. It was only until the Italian aristocracy then started to bring more symbology into the cards, and then it would be like a story tell. You know, you would lay the cards out and you would just tell a story, not a divination, just a story through the cards. So,
you see like the old playing cards in the old cowboy films, when it's just a number on the corner of the card and then diamond, club, or spade. And hearts, obviously. So, you know.
And it's changed over the years to become a form of divination, and then that has changed. More expensive decks are made, you know, that's where artistry comes in to it all. And then we then put the wicker on top of it, so it becomes cups, swords, coins, and staves, or wands, whichever way you want to do. They brought more character cards in. You know, a part of this is all to do with that storytelling that they started with. But people were reading through normal playing card. You can do normal playing card reads as well. You don't have to use tarot cards. You know, and they say it's evolved and changed over the years. But originally they weren't designed with mysticism. It was all about parlour games, a way to spend the time, like bridge.
Yeah.
You know, that kind
I
of
prefer
thing.
poker, but yeah.
Yeah, card game.
Definitely.
It's incredibly interesting when you start looking at various forms of divination as to their origins and then what they mean. There's a lot of themes that run through as well. Again, we've talked about, you know, different cultures have different interpretations, and sometimes it's just down to terminology and the way it's been put across and overlaid on their culture and their history. But actually, when you distill it down to the meaning, it's the same.
I do know, obviously, there are a lot of different cards out there, and I mean, not just like tarot, but you've got the oracle cards as well and angel cards, but they're all essentially, I think, the same thing. But obviously, as well, there's different patterns, as you said, and I mean, the cards that I've got here are I think it's Game of Thrones ones.
Yeah.
But you know, you've got all types of ones. It's almost like a game. You know, like the Monopoly boards would have different Monopoly boards. It's the same sort of thing with tarot cards now. I'll notice that trend coming in.
You can get Hello Kitty tarot cards.
Yeah.
You can get all sorts.
Yeah, that's it. I've noticed that trend quite a bit.
But again, we go to choosing a deck or a method of divination, whether or not that's tarot, whether that's oracle, whether that's astrology, whether that's, you know, whatever area of divination you want to use. Pick one. Pick what resonates with you, because you're likely to stay with it longer because you've got that interest.
Isn't there even websites where you can design your own tarot cards?
Yeah.
So if you wanted to, you could have pictures of your family on them.
If you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do all sorts of things. And part of a process of, I think the Hermetic Order, I think it's one of the societies, the occult societies, part of that process is divining your own deck, which is why Aleister Crowler has his own deck. He devised that himself.
Okay.
And that's part of the process of initiation. Is
and what's he got on his one then? Like Loch Ness Monster and
it's quite dark, as you can imagine from Aleister, and from what I know, I believe it's quite sexual as well. But he was very pushed the boundaries on a lot of things. Did Aleister Crowley?
Okay. He's got one. I bet then his one's a bit like the old playing cards with the naked ladies on it and things.
No, they're a bit more involved than that because they've got a heavily mysticism going into it. But that's where basically the Rider-Waite came from.
Yeah, I didn't want to go too far into that, really.
No.
Cast up all sorts of images that I don't want.
And also within it, there's a lot of Christian symbology as well. You know, when you, I mean, we're talking quite heavily on tarot. That's probably because it's my area of expertise. Again, that word. I feel awful using that word now. Thanks, paranormal community.
You're an expert. I still class you as an expert on it.
Oh, thank you.
Because it's something that people come to you for readings, and they pay you. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes you an expert because people keep coming back to you. So you must be doing something right.
Oh, true. That's true.
So, if that to me, I mean, I couldn't do it. So to me, you're more of an expert in it than I am.
So if I was to make my own tarot deck, I would have to work with each card individually, because you've got a 78 card deck, right? So you take each point specifically, area specifically, work with each card. And then that would take a lot of meditation. That would take a lot of, what the basis of each step is supposed to mean, because even within the normal lower arcana cards, the minor, they call them, which is basically 1 to then the suits. So you go through, but each is like a step. Again, it's steps of what you go through in a journey.
Yeah.
in a relationship, for example, you start off and use the honeymoon period, we call it. It's all lovely.
Yeah, see, so I just jumped straight to the end where I'm a millionaire.
That's money. That's different from love,
Just eating everything.
relationships.
Just,
But you always go through a period of deception, a period of knowledge. You fall off that honeymoon period and go into true learning, and there's usually a period of deception and heartbreak and crap like that. And then you come out the other side and you get true understanding. But it's a journey. It's a journey through.
That's when you get to live with someone, and it's like, then you really do.
Really start learning about somebody, don't you? But do you truly know somebody? There's a concept. You don't, do you? You think you know them, but you only know what they show.
Exactly, yeah.
You don't ever truly know somebody, or every level, because we're like onions, aren't we, humans?
Mm.
We are like onions. And we haven't even looked into, other forms of divination, like scrying or tea leaf reading and stuff like that. And we've pretty much come to the end of the show, and we've not even gone in.
One page to our research, haven't we?
Pardon?
We're only into one page of our research.
Yeah, we've not even really gone that far through. And this is how it is, isn't it? This is how it works. This is the questions it raises and the rabbit holes it takes you down to. And you have to look at the psychology side of things and the possible rational side of things, and then it doesn't explain everything, so you go back to mysticism and where's that information coming from. Even a medium says, well, I've got a guide, but where that's coming from, they don't know.
And I think that's why I have such not an issue as such, but this is where I struggle with all this sort of stuff, because I'm very scientific minded, and it's like, where does this all come from? You must know. If you're getting it, you got to know where it comes from, even if it is a spirit guide or something. It mystifies me. That's probably the best word to describe it, and I think that's why I have an issue with it. I just think it's too vague.
Too vague.
Yeah.
Well, I think I should set you another task.
My opinion.
I think I should set you another task at this point.
Okay, go for it.
I think you should go and have a divination form of reading beyond me, somebody who doesn't know you at all. Yeah, I'm not talking a medium reading. I'm talking a divination kind of reading. So like go to a tarot reader, somebody who doesn't know you, like I know you. And see what they say. See what comes out for you from somebody who doesn't know you, who's literally just reading a form of divination. So that does discount a lot of your friends who do it.
It does, doesn't it?
We are going to have to find something. Maybe I'll pull from some friends of mine that do it that you don't know and haven't met.
Yeah, okay.
And see what they come up with. Just out of curiosity, just to see if that convinces you anymore.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Maybe I'll ask them if I can put it on the air.
It would be interesting, wouldn't it?
We can share that, yeah. It would be interesting, very interesting indeed.
A complete stranger reading Mr. Paul Rook.
Yeah.
Divining his future. Be prepared. You may not always hear what you want to hear, though, from whatever form of method of divining you want. But I would say this: don't ever make any decisions off of anything anybody says to you in this way. There's supposed to be a guide, an interesting tool, but never make a life decision off the back of it, because you might have to go through something to learn a life lesson for your soul progression.
Okay.
There's that side of it too. So we're going to have to come back to this topic at some point and look at some of the other forms in a little bit more depth. I mean, we've literally skirted around the subject of, we've not even looked at the historical run of any of these methods we've talked. We've talked a lot about theory and gone down various avenues on this. But there is we've not even covered the outskirts of this topic, really. But next week, we're not going down this route. We're going down a different route next week. We're looking at cryptozoology. And we've actually got a guest on with us, I think, next week. So stay tuned. Check us out on the social medias, Paranormal Concept, or go over to our website, paranormalconcept.com. Check out our blogs and also buy our books. We've got a couple of books out now where we have lots.
And you can go to they're on the website, so you can look and buy them there.
Or go to Amazon and you can get them on there as well.
Mhm.
So we shall revisit this topic at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably the week after.
We'll see if we can get him a reading before then as well. On that note, we've actually come to the end of the show.
Oh, it's gone quick.
It has, it always does.
I was so looking forward to doing some more of your research.
Another time. We'll have to save it for another time.
Yes, definitely.
On that note, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.